Welcome to Podcast 2, Building Confidence and How to Notice and Listen. We are here today to get into the headspace of some outstanding education leaders and CPCO associates. Today's conversation will focus on the work of Catholic leaders to support student mental health. This podcast is part of a series of resources currently being developed to assist school leaders in the work they are doing in their schools to support students' mental health and well-being. This series is created by School Mental Health Ontario in partnership with the three principal associations in our province, ADFO, CPCO, and OPC. The project is designed to support school leaders' knowledge and practice and has 5 learning components to it, which include 3 webinars, 2 podcasts, and a whiteboard animation. These resources can be found on our CPCO website. My name is Deirdre Kinsella-Biss, and I am the CPCO project lead for this leadership series. I'm very excited to be part of this conversation today. I am a principal formerly from Dufferin Peel, and I look forward to learning with and from you. Before we start, please join me in a land acknowledgement and prayer. This land, as we know it today, is rich in the history and modern traditions of many First Nations, the Métis, and Inuit. Our Catholic social teachings call us, in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters, to honor and respect the 4 directions, lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors that walked before us. All these wonderful elements of creation exist, gifted to us by our Creator God. No matter where you are on Turtle Island, which is now known as Canada and the United States, you are always on Indigenous territory. It is an important act of reconciliation to know on whose land we stand on and work together in the spirit of the treaties which cover those lands. Please join me in the opening prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Dear God, thank you for the blessings, all those who work within our Catholic school communities with their calling to teach and serve as Jesus did. Give them a spirit of grace and compassion always. Bless them with strength and endurance to perform their many tasks, especially during challenging times. May they know and feel the gratitude of those whom they teach. In Jesus' name, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen.
Hello, I am Dr. Deanna Swift, a school psychologist and implementation coach at School Mental Health Ontario, and I lead the special education and mental health portfolio. School Mental Health Ontario is a provincial implementation support team. We work together with Ontario school districts to enhance student mental health through the use of evidence-based strategies and services. We provide leadership and guidance about best practices in school mental health, including tailored co-created resources and training. I am looking forward to our discussion today.
Good morning. My name is Diane Mullane, and I'm the mental health leader with the Durham Catholic District School Board. I've been in this role since 2013, and as you probably know, every school board in Ontario has a mental health leader, and we act as a liaison between the province and our school boards in terms of mental health. And we're responsible for implementing the mental health strategy in our school boards, and really our role in the system is to support the rollout of initiatives, and certainly we're there behind the scenes supporting our school leaders in any way we can.
Good morning, my name is Deanne Strong. I am a principal with the Catholic District School Board of Eastern Ontario. I have been an administrator for the last 13 years in both the elementary and secondary panels. Currently, I am the principal of St. John Catholic High School in Perth, Ontario, which is a grade 7 to 12 school.
Good morning. My name is Rob Ciccelli, and I'm a principal with the St. Clair Catholic District School Board. I've been a principal in both elementary and secondary schools, and currently I am the principal of the virtual secondary school.
Good morning. My name is Lori Bryden, and I'm an administrator with the Algonquin and Lakeshore Catholic District School Board. I've been an administrator for the past 6 years, and currently my role is principal of St. Paul Catholic School in Kingston. Let's start a conversation about some of the indicators or strategies that staff use in schools to notice students' strengths and when they struggle with mental health. I've been thinking about how I, as a school leader, lead staff to notice and name what they do each day. It's very important to create a culture of noticing within the school. Knowing and understanding our students is a whole school approach that includes welcoming our students from the moment they arrive, as well as interacting with students apart from the academics at recess, etc. When a staff member gets to know a student, establishing trust, it is much easier to identify a student's baseline, how he or she usually appears and behaves, and then even subtle differences can become a pause for caution. My board's pastoral theme, all are welcome in this place, contributes to my school's approach to the building of intentional Catholic environments. We intentionally work to ensure that every student, staff member, parent, and community member feels welcome in our school and belongs. Our multi-year strategic plan, our BIPSA, and our school SIPSA all intentionally focus on building staff capacity related to foundational mental health promotion practices using school mental health reflection tool. All staff look for opportunities to welcome, include, understand, promote, and partner. We look for evidence of our work daily and complete the reflection tool as part of our SIPSA monitoring cycle. School mental health is a wealth of excellent resources for promoting mental health and well-being, as well as frameworks for early response when there are emotional concerns. As a whole school approach, I lead staff to have a better understanding of student profiles, such as strengths, needs, and interests, as well as their social and emotional baseline. Documents such as school mental health supporting minds assist to further explain the profiles of students who may be struggling with their emotions or struggling with mental health. This resource highlights the promotion of student mental health and well-being. It features common mental health concerns that are prevalent in schools, such as anxiety. It's easy to use and share with staff. For example, at each staff meeting, I can highlight an area such as most recently, I highlighted anxiety, what it looks like in a school, and strategies that can assist. It's easier to respond to concerns as a school when all staff have the same understanding.
That's great, Lori. I really like how you started off by talking about some of the excellent School Mental Health Ontario resources, including the reflection tool, and then how you spoke to the Supporting Minds document, which currently there's also an at a glance version, which is a really nice little handbook that goes through just the common mental health problems that educators are most likely to notice in their schools. One of the other things you mentioned was that notion of welcome, include, understand, promote, and partner. And that is the AIM model or framework, which is the aligned and integrated model for school mental health. And this is an excellent tool that certainly I know a lot of leaders are rolling out and really working with their staff in understanding this. And the Mentally Healthy Classroom Reflection tool is actually based on this AIM model. And so, it really helps to clarify the role of the educator in promoting positive mental health through that mentally healthy classrooms approach. And so the bottom tier is where we really want educators to focus most of their energies. And when educators create those caring conditions for learning, when they do those things, such as welcome, include, understand, promote, and partner, students can really feel comfortable that there are caring adults in the building that they could turn to if they're having any kind of difficulty, whether that be academically, socially, behaviorally, or emotionally. And when we think about the caring conversations that educators are having, especially those targeted conversations that really, ask the student, how was your weekend? How are you doing? What's going on for you? This is an opportunity for educators to notice and listen for those students who are struggling and recognize those young folks who might need a higher dose of support and potentially then moving up the tiers. And this empowers staff to do what they can, but also to know when they need to call in others for additional support.
Diane, I really like the conversation around the caring adult. I think it focuses on the strength-based approach. And by that, it means we really do recognize and create a culture in a school where all staff, no matter what position they have, are looking at and noticing, the keyword noticing in the school. And they're noticing when students are doing well, and they're echoing that sentiment, and they're letting students know what they're doing well, not just academically, but social, emotionally. And then, of course, when there are challenges and students are facing those challenges, that it's easier to have that conversation about what is happening and what is being noticed in particular. There's a trust that's developed. And that strength-based approach is, I think, one that instinctively staff lean to. They want to have strong relationships with the students that are in the building. And I think they're exceptionally good at recognizing when there's been a shift for a student, when they're not well. And of course, the everyday mental health resources and the faith and wellness resources are excellent for us to use so that we do continue to provide support and professional development for all staff that are in buildings so that we do recognize them more readily. But instinctively, I think we can trust our guts and trust our instincts that when something is happening in a student's life, that we, the adults, the caring adults in that building, notice.
As administrators, I think we are all noticing more and more indicators that are pointing to mental health and wellness. It is very important as leaders that we are making staff aware of what these indicators are and the strategies and supports that are available that we can all use to support students and even our staff who are struggling. Developing relationships with all members of our school community is so important. As an administrator, we have a very important role to play. Sometimes this role can be more direct in support, but often it becomes more indirect in nature. Perhaps our biggest role, as Rob and both Lori have mentioned, is to build relationships by creating a supportive and healthy environment so that all members of our school community thrive. As Rob alluded to earlier, we as administrators can encourage the use of the Everyday Mental Health Classroom resource, which teachers can embed into daily classroom practice. It is also really important for an administrator to model strategies for their school community. This could be as simple as stopping to say hello to a student or a teacher in the hallway. It could be checking in to see how someone is doing. It could be making mental health a focus in your school by addressing issues in a staff meeting or a student success meeting. It could be developing initiatives that will support the needs of the school community, or it could be creating opportunities to provide training for staff, or quite honestly, it could be acknowledging your own mental health. As an educational leader, not only are you there to help to fix things, but more importantly, you have to be able to understand and empathize what others may be going through. Over the last year and having to learn in a virtual manner, working to build relationships within the school community has not only been challenging, but it has forced administrators and all educators to be creative and to find ways to connect, rekindle, and really further build these relationships. We have needed to find ways to check in, whether it is through social media, a phone call, or even through a distant visit. But perhaps what the past year has taught us, particularly teachers and administrators, is that we are learning to navigate these waters together and to work together to find the best possible ways and solutions to ease the fears and anxiety that our students and parents are facing. We've had to find ways to find hope, and one way we can do that is by relying on our faith. And over the past year, we've had to be creative in how we do that too. As a Catholic school board, we have been challenged to put our gospel values to work to support those in need by offering supportive messages to support those frontline workers, donating food and money to our local food banks so that our students and families could be provided for. We've had to find ways to continue to spread the word through remote liturgies, masses, and virtual choirs, which has renewed a sense of hope and faith during these challenging times. Our Catholic faith also provides us with unique opportunities that can support and nurture mental health, wellness. Whether it is through Christian meditation, mindfulness activities, reflecting on scripture, or even through prayer, there are a number of resources on the School Mental Health Ontario website that educators can use to weave our Catholic faith to support and address mental health and wellness.
It was so wonderful to hear all of you talking about the importance that you place at your school in really thinking about how do we set up a mentally healthy culture and climate in our school by working with our educators to develop those relationships at the base, right? Making sure as leaders that you're connected with your teachers, as challenging as that may be, and in creative ways that we have to find to reach out to our educators, and emphasizing really those relationships with our students, getting to know them and understand the unique circumstances that they come with, which may pose challenges to learning and coming to school every day, and thinking about ways in our community that we support them, whether it's food security or other things they might need, is such a wonderful base to really think about getting to know our students. And that way we're noticing, right? We're able to notice when something's not quite right. We're able to engage in those conversations and hear from them and really listen to them. So we have that opportunity to notice and then take the next step should there be a concern and a further conversation needed. So I'm wondering a little bit about how, as school leaders, you prepare staff in your school to notice when students might be having a mental health concern. What is it that you might do with your educators and pose that learning and discussion as a staff to make sure you're well positioned to explicitly notice and speak to students?
Well, I can certainly jump in here. Mental health and wellness truly is a whole school approach. As administrators, we recognize how important the job of our teachers truly are. They are the frontline workers that see what is happening each and every day. We all have to work together to find ways to not only support the academic learning of our students, but the social emotional learning of it as well. With the emphasis that is given with numeracy and literacy in our school curriculum, mental health and wellness also needs to be embedded in our curriculum. But everyone within the school needs to address, support, and nurture it. Like learning how to read and write, it needs to become part of our daily practice. Administrators need to make it part of their school improvement plan. For an administrator to develop and achieve this, it needs to become an area that you focus on at every staff meeting. Just as we focus on literacy and numeracy, we also need to acknowledge and address and find ways to support our mental health and wellness needs that exist in and continue to present themselves really within our school community. Building capacity is something that will provide better knowledge, but an awareness of how to deal and how to proceed and plan for our school community's needs. Providing opportunities for staff to take part in training opportunities helps to not only build this capacity within our schools, but it allows staff to feel more comfortable in dealing with mental health situations. It might mean working with your board's mental health lead to promote programs that help students and staff understand mental health. For instance, my board and mental health lead work to bring in sources of strength to support students in my school, to give them a voice and provide opportunity to promote mental wellness within the school. As well, my mental health lead helped to initiate the Not Myself Today campaign for staff to focus on and better understand a student or staff member's mental health. These initiatives also gave staff tools and resources that they could use in the classroom, but more importantly, for themselves as well. An important resource is the first 10 days of the school year toolkit that can be found in the School Mental Health Ontario website. This is an extremely valuable resource that administrators can provide for their teachers. This first 10 days not only works beautifully for the start of school, but when you have a lockdown or the need to pivot to remote learning, you could use it after Christmas break, but it becomes an invaluable tool. This toolkit allows teachers and students to address a welcoming environment, look at transitions, healthy relationships, and how we can maintain a positive attitude. Another important tool for administrators to use is the Mentally Healthy Schools Reflection Tool, which can also be found on the website. This tool allows administrators and school teams to take a collaborative look at how to address, meet the needs, and work to develop a more cohesive approach to mental health within your school. Like the 10-day mental health plan, this tool also looks to solidify an approach that will work for all. This reflection tool targets what needs to be addressed within your school, which can easily be incorporated into your school improvement plan. And one other area, if I might add, that needs to be mentioned is that administrators need to look for opportunities for their staff to participate in training, such as Safe Talk or Assist, to mention a couple. This not only builds capacity in your school but more importantly, becomes a whole school approach when dealing with mental health and awareness.
Deanne, you mentioned the importance of building relationships and the power of getting to know our students and training for staff. I believe it's not only important to notice and name the strategies for mental health wellness, but as a leader, it's also important to model the strategies. It really is a whole school approach where staff work as a team to understand the student first and any changes in their emotional part of their baseline. As leaders in modeling, it's important to take a stance of curiosity, to pause and think about what is happening here before taking action. This is an excellent trauma-informed strategy. I remember that a few months into the school year, when I was a new VP, when presenting the trauma-informed approach to staff, one staff member remarked that this stance of curiosity, that's something that you do all the time. And at this point, I hadn't named the stance, only modeled it. Maintaining a compassionate stance is truly the most important thing that as a leader you can model. Hearing the students' concerns and putting their feelings about the problem into words is also really helpful. Naming and describing it. School mental health resources have a list of prompts that can help staff lead students' discussion, such as, it would make sense that you wouldn't want to come in from recess. I truly understand. When I put myself in your shoes, I could imagine that you are feeling frustrated that you lost your work on the computer. I totally understand. And I'm wondering what we can do next. So that supportive stance as a leader and taking the stance of curiosity, to me, is very important.
I love, Lori, how you talked about trauma-informed approaches and really think that that's an effective way of looking at and thinking about things in our school boards. And, one statement that really resonates for me when I think about trauma-informed schools is just that notion of asking ourselves, not what's wrong with this child, but what happened to this child, and then try to view it from that lens. And I like how you mentioned, naming and describing sort of what's going on. One of the tools that can be really effective for educators as well, and this is offered on the School Mental Health Ontario website, is the one call process. And basically, one call is an acronym, and it stands for observe, notice, explore, connect, ask, listen, and link. And it's a really nice little tool that many boards have rolled out to their educators because it provides a step-by-step approach to support students when they exhibit signs of an emotional or behavioral issue. So it really includes some really targeted information on what to look for. It provides some starter statements. So, how do I open up that conversation with a student? And gives some guidance on when to reach out for additional support. And it really encourages staff to look for changes in frequency, intensity, duration, and then to know what to do or what the next steps are if they are seeing some difficulties or changes in those areas. So again, this is a tool that's readily available, and I think for staff, really nice to have a little desk reference tool.
When I think about what we do to prepare staff to notice, I think it comes in different shapes and for different reasons. I think we do have to give license to staff, all staff, to notice. And as simple as that might sound, it's so important because we want everyone in the building to know that they are observing. And when they're observing and they see something, that they, no matter what their role is, teacher, support in the classroom, they are custodians in our buildings, secretaries, that they feel they can come and share what they are observing. And so then that leads itself to the common purpose. Our purpose is here, that we're here for the wellness and the success of every student in the building, and we do that together. If we can form that, and as administrators, one of the, I think, most important tasks we have is creating that culture where we say that this is our common purpose, we are in this together, and that the relationships that you're building are not just with students, but they're with each other as a staff. They're definitely with parents and with our community partners who support us, because we do need them. And I think when we do that, then staff feel more comfortable trying to elicit that student voice and the parent voice. And when we do that, boy, we can really begin to see some success, because now we eliminate the stigma that comes with speaking about mental health or mental wellness. And it really all does come, though, from the common purpose. And if we can articulate that and show that, and then, to be fair, I think we do need to consistently bring that conversation forward. And we do have to celebrate the successes that we see in our building, and we have to name them. And in fact, sometimes we have to name the people we work with. And I know at times that can be a bit of a struggle for us, because we want to be fair to everyone we work with. But when we notice and we articulate it and name it, I do believe that that helps create the culture for us in our school. And it continues a positive cycle of noticing.
Rob, as I listen to you, I really appreciate the observation that we need to think about all of the caring adults in the building, not just our teachers. So when we think about preparing our staff to notice and to create that culture of open conversation, to reduce the stigma, to engage parents and students in conversations about their wellness, how they're doing, what they might need. I like your thinking beyond that. When we're preparing staff, we also have to think about where's the opportunity for our support staff and our custodians and our secretaries and our bus drivers, because it really is a shared responsibility and a culture of noticing, so that we are modeling that not only are we wanting to notice with the students in our building, but notice for each other as well. And to have staff check in with each other and also notice and have those, engagements and conversations so that we're all taking care of each other as a school community. I love that thought. And I wanted to make sure that I reinforce that for folks because I think it's so, so important.
Just building on what Deanna was just speaking about in terms of checking in with each other. And I really like that notion of, including all staff and thinking about how are we doing as well. And it just makes me reflect on the staff wellness piece and the fact that, we need our staff to be well in order to provide that environment for our students to experience well-being. And just in our role as mental health leaders in school boards, we're primarily focused on student mental health. That is our mandate from the ministry. Having said that, I think for most of us, when we assumed our positions in our boards, we knew that it would be difficult to get the traction with staff without acknowledging the importance of staff well-being at the outset. So I think as school leaders, it's really important to emphasize to staff that, you're concerned about their mental health as well. Lots of reminders to put on their own oxygen mask and create that environment to be able to support student well-being. And as administrators, you have a huge role to play in this. And, in some ways, you're like the parent in the school building. One of the things that we've promoted in our system is the notion that what's good for our students is good for all. So we've encouraged administrators to use, just for example, the faith and wellness practices in their staff meetings or other kinds of meeting starters to do regular check-ins with their staff, not just their students. And there's a really nice handout that's available through School Mental Health Ontario, and it looks at personal resiliency. And this might be just a great way for administrators to kick off that conversation. It focuses on the connection between physical and mental health. So it comments on the importance of sleep, nutrition, activity, but also that notion of prioritizing self-care and encouraging staff to take breaks, to maintain connections, to pay attention to their own needs, and to engage in self-compassion. So, it's just a little reminder that we need to be paying attention and noticing well-being in our educators as well.
So thinking about preparing our educators and having those important conversations, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more about how do we reach consistent communication and messaging? How do we emphasize and support the importance of noticing and listening in your school?
Well, I can certainly talk to this. Communication is so key. Getting information out there and making sure that you're providing resources to student, staff, parents is so vitally important. This communication needs to be consistent as well. In my board, each week there is a social and emotional learning tip of the week that is sent to principals every Friday to share with their staff. And these tips provide opportunities for teachers and students to make connections with school reality and with life in general. For instance, one tip of the week focused on making mistakes and recognizing that it's all right to make mistakes, as it can help us to become more resilient and it can lead to success. Other tips of the week have included mindfulness activities, breathing exercises, self-acceptance and anxiety, and any other areas that students may be struggling in. By having staff deliver these social emotional learning lessons, a culture begins to develop that everyone's mental health is important and needs to be nurtured. As well, by using proactive circles in the classroom when delivering these lessons, it allows the students and teacher to really notice and listen to what others are struggling with through that communication and what supports can be put into place to help. I mentioned at the start that communication is key, and it is important that student voice is communicated here, as it allows us as educators to better understand the needs and challenges that our students are currently facing so that we can better support them.
Deanne, your point around communication resonates with me. I can't agree more. Messaging everywhere in one's practice is very important. Messaging around positive, mentally healthy schools is very important. Our network meetings, our community administrators start with social emotional learning tips at each meeting. We also begin with breathing exercises infusing our faith, such as Pope Francis' 5-finger breathing technique. And this is also a wonderful tool, strategy to present to our staff at staff meetings, as well as to infuse throughout our classrooms. I'd like to go back again to the importance of modeling. Modeling and promoting mental health strategies at the Tier 1 universal classroom level is extremely important. Part of this modeling includes all of these great mentally healthy strategies that are available on the school mental health website. I also think, as Diane recommended and said so beautifully, it's about taking care of ourselves as a model for our staff, students, parents, and community. Whether it's how we approach our work daily, whether it's meeting the students, first thing at the school bus to find out how they're doing. Staff celebrations are very important, but really checking in with our school teams to make sure that they're doing okay, checking in with our parents to make sure that they're doing okay, especially during these challenging times.
In this area, it's so important, again, all around the concept of noticing. And we have a tremendous responsibility, but we also have a tremendous influence as a school staff. And that influence is when we can stop and plant our feet for a moment and be present where those feet are and listen. Unfortunately, we know our schools are busy places. And at times we move and transition from one challenge to the next. And I find it difficult at times to be an active listener. But when we are an active listener, then we can respond in a way that has significant and tremendous influence. And we've all heard this coined before, that we are the voice and the hands of God each day. I've used it myself, more so recently. And I'm a firm believer that our faith really does allow us this wonderful gift to remind ourselves why we're here. Every nudge, every action, every word is a voice of God. And we have a tremendous responsibility, but this responsibility impacts students in such a significant way. And it impacts them academically, which has always been and always should be one of our primary goals. But it also impacts student wellness. We save lives. And German theologian Dorothy Sohl, a friend, recently shared this with me. I'm paraphrasing what she said, but she said that seeing with God's eyes, hearing with God's ears, and acting with God's passion is truly a liberating experience. But it's a liberating experience not just for the person who is involved in those actions and in those words, but the community they live in. So I think we've all seen that happen in a school before. When we work collectively and our hearts and in our minds are in the right places, that everybody benefits from it. We feel it. You feel it in the staff room. You feel it in the halls. Getting there is difficult, no doubt, but prioritizing it is important for all of us. And we're fortunate we have our mental health leads and we have the team members that work with them that we need to lean on and learn from as much as possible. And we've heard, or I have used this phrase myself, that we as a staff should be in the relentless pursuit of student achievement. Keywords, relentless pursuit. And as I reflect on it, I think I need to look at it as the relentless pursuit of student wellness, which includes achievement, but is so much wider than that. And our faith, we're very blessed to be in Catholic schools where we are allowed to follow the teachings. And that is a perfect fit when we're talking about how we can notice and listen in our schools.
Just a quick comment to add to that, Rob. I like how you talked about the relentless pursuit of student achievement and then flipping that to the relentless pursuit of student wellness. And I know in our board, and in every board, I would think, we talk about student well-being and achievement. In our board, we say well-being first. And I think, one of the discussions we've had is that reciprocal relationship between achievement and well-being, that kids can't achieve academically if they're not doing well. But in some ways, it goes the other way too, that kids need to have success and achieve to contribute to their well-being. So that's a really, really important notion. I really like that you brought that up.
And to follow that up, Diane, I hear all of our school leaders talking about really being explicit and intentional about reminding educators and our whole school community different tips, different resources that we have available to think about those authentic conversations, to maybe make a conversation starter about how to check in with students, how to notice what's going on for them, and always reminding them that the resources are there, right? We have a plethora of resources. And at the end of the day, they are resources. And it's the authentic relationships and planting our feet on the ground, as Rob talked about, and taking that moment to listen, and then thinking about when the appropriate time is to have that conversation, whether it's with an educator or with a student, but in those relationships and getting to understand one another and thinking about how to be inclusive of the students in front of them and what makes them unique and what their challenges may be, and celebrating their strengths really helps us bring those resources to life and make those everyday practices, and finding the opportunities to promote that wellness, right, is so important in every school day. So yeah, I think that's a lot to be celebrated. And that's with leadership of intentionally keeping that at the forefront of our school climate, reminding our educators that this is important. And we do value this alongside student achievement. In fact, it's the base of, student achievement, it's reciprocal relationship, which is so fantastic. Wow, we have such great school leaders and such great examples of, promoting mentally healthy schools. So I'm wondering now that we know educators are not mental health professionals, but they can help inspire purpose, hope, belonging, and meaning through direct instruction and daily interactions with students within accepting and safe school environments. I'm wondering if each of you can think of a student success story that you can share with us and describe how it was related to the strategies that are being implemented in your school or district.
I really like this question or this opportunity to share, because I truly believe there are so many ordinary people that I work with, and I consider myself an ordinary person. I don't think ordinary is, the connotation is not negative at all. In fact, it's positive. We are ordinary people, but we do extraordinary things. And many times it's not noticed, nor does anyone speak to it. It's just done humbly. And so I'm glad to share a couple of situations that I'm aware of. That one in particular was a teacher in our school who was packing a lunch for a student every day. And this was in a secondary school environment. I didn't know about this until the very end of the school year. And when I found out about it, I was so impressed and so glad and so happy that it happened. But of course, this was a teacher noticing, and then a teacher moving into action after they had created a relationship of trust with the student. And the student trusted them so much that it wasn't just about food. It started with food, but then it became an exceptionally safe place for them. A place where they could talk, a place where they could share, a place where they could vent. And it also became a place of care, because when the teacher packed the lunch and the student didn't arrive, of course, the next step happened. Why didn't they come to school that day? And what conversation took place because of that? That truly is being present, and being present in the lives of students and the impact they can have. And I also wanted to just comment on the roles that mental health and addiction nurses have in our schools. They are a tremendous support to us as a community partner. And I have seen and witnessed and been a part of conversations where I noticed that their impact on students was extensive and truthfully saved lives. But one example was that the student who had been impacted by the mental health and addictions nurse in such a positive and constructive way offered to come back and offered to support her in her messaging, in her positive work within our school environment. And we found a way of making that happen in a very controlled way and in a very small way. There was a contribution that was being made for students back into our home school.
Both Rob and Lori have mentioned several times in our discussion today about noticing, and it really does start when someone notices. That can make all the difference in someone's life. I am reminded of a grade 9 student who wrote a letter to his teacher this school year, and I've kept it actually. To give you some context, this student really struggled in grade 8 with anxiety, and the behaviors that manifested from it were very challenging, and he really struggled socially and emotionally. This year has been very different. The student is less anxious, is happier, seems more engaged, and the behaviors that we saw last year have diminished significantly. And I firmly believe that it's because, I think in large part, it was that one teacher who truly noticed him. And in his own words, the student stated in his letter to the teacher that, and I quote, "You changed my life. The last 2 years, I was in a terrible state of mind. You taught me it's the matter of effort and respect you put towards something that will make you succeed, not the people around you. You believed in me, and that is something I will never forget." Not only did that teacher have an impact on that student, but that student left an impact on that teacher as well. She was so touched by what he had written that she shared it with many staff members, and in the process, shifted their thinking and attitude of this grade 9 student. In doing so, she also reaffirmed that it just takes the support of a caring adult to notice hidden potential and strengths in a child to begin to make the difference.
Yeah, like you, I can't highlight enough the importance of a caring adult for a student. It doesn't matter one's role within a school. When every staff member takes responsibility for their students' well-being, it is extremely powerful. The importance of support staff is also very powerful. Rob talked about silent heroes, and they are our silent heroes. I remember a custodian in my first school as vice principal. I also remember a student who had suffered great loss and how this custodian became that caring adult for this child. At the time, I didn't realize the impact that the custodian had on this student until the student spoke about him at grade 8 graduation. The custodian truly did make a difference in this child's life.
I really love the beautiful stories in each instance. It just is so heartwarming to hear these stories. And I hope people are using the hashtag share the good on their Twitter to share these positive stories. One of the things that really resonates for me, and I think throughout this whole discussion today, we've been just talking about relationships. And one of the things when we think about our students who might be struggling is that students are not likely to reach out until they know that there's somebody there who they can trust and that that person will be able to listen and willing to listen and hear their story. So it's just that importance of that caring adult. And one of the things that's extremely important is knowing their baseline so that we can notice when something has changed for that. And without that relationship, we don't really know that. So just again, that relationship word and how important that is.
So I'm wondering, when there is that important connection and educators are noticing and the caring adults in the building are noticing, what are the next steps? What are some of the effective supports and processes that you have implemented within your school building that support students who might be at greater risk for mental health challenges? What do you have to think about as a school leader to make sure that processes and practices are in place to make sure when there is a concern that can be brought forth and that student can be helped?
I don't mind jumping in at this point. And really, I think I like to focus on, it's a team approach. We in schools know that we have a tremendous amount of needs, but we also know that we're being supported. And our mental health leads and our board, as well as the team members that work with our mental health lead, are actively engaged in our school community. And we have to open our arms, our eyes, and our ears to accept them in. And they have very focused resources and supports that they can provide us. And in particular, our board has really worked with intentional small groups. And these intentional small groups really are based on the specific needs that students might have at that time, because we've noticed those needs in our school community. And we do feel that anything from a virtual drop-in session or even sessions that are coordinated as part of the school day, These are effective ways that we can continue to work together as a team. There's those who notice, and then there's those who come in to support. And the communication after those pieces has to be strong between us and the schools so that we continue to know where our students are, what their future needs might be. And this really does help increase our efficacy within the building collectively as a team. And we know that for students, this really does prove to be a very positive experience where they continue to grow, know more about themselves, strengthen themselves, find safe places to talk. It increases their resiliency to be able to then foster that practice as they continue to grow, be older, and then graduate from our schools, because this is a life skill that is needed well beyond our schools.
Rob, you mentioned that your mental health lead is actively engaged with your school team. Like you, I also find that the mental health lead is an excellent support. She's always very accessible to my school team, and she has a wealth of knowledge about mental health and well-being, including her as a lead in the case conference, where access to services can be explained to parents, students, and staff is crucial to moving forward in a seamless way. I know I don't have all the answers to assist our students, so it really is about that circle of support, and the mental health lead is a critical part of this team.
So one of the things that I just want to mention is the importance of protocols and ensuring that all staff are aware of board protocols for our students who are at higher risk. So an example would be that every school board in Ontario is required to have a suicide protocol. And in our board, we've updated ours this year, adding information about the virtual context and some specific populations as well. And so, one of the things that we did, and every board might look different in this regard, but we did a rollout to all of our school leaders, our gatekeepers, and really emphasize sort of that mental health literacy piece around the suicide. And then leaders brought the key messages back to their own school staff with more of an awareness level presentation. Staff in schools may not need the same amount of information about the protocol because they're only involved in certain aspects of it, but all staff need that awareness and the reminders on an ongoing basis of what the protocols are and what's their role within the protocols. And so, all staff really need to be aware of warning signs, what to look for. They need to know that confidentiality doesn't apply when suicide is a possibility. And again, they need to know their role. So who do they reach out to if they're concerned? And then from there, what are the next steps? One of the other things that was mentioned was the role of the mental health leader and the role of some of the support staff, such as mental health and addictions nurses that are some of our partners. And every board has different community partners, but I think the MAN nurses are a consistent one. In most school boards, or maybe not most, but in a lot of school boards, there are other support staff as well. So just for example, in our board, our mental health support is primarily provided through our clinical teams. So our school mental health professionals, which include social workers and psychological services staff. And each board may have different ways of accessing these services. Often it's through a school team approach. During this particular time, we have an access line set up so that parents and students have a different way to access the service if, the school team approach is not effective for them at this point. But, as I said, every school board has different access to different kinds of services. So in terms of what school mental health professionals provide, they do offer a range of services for students with mild to moderate mental health concerns who may require a tier 2 to tier 3 level of support. And this could range from a brief intervention, such as a model that we call BRISC. It might be an evidence-based group support, and I think Rob spoke to that a little bit in his discussion point. In some cases, it might be a more in-depth individual cognitive behavior therapy type approach. They also offer crisis support. We all know how important it is to have clinical staff on hand during those difficult times of crisis and trauma. And one thing that's really important to point out is that these are highly trained clinical staff, and School Mental Health Ontario provides a great deal of expertise level training in many of these areas. So the experts within your system have great skills to offer. The last thing that I just want to mention is that, sometimes the intensity of the service required is perhaps beyond what can be offered in a school setting. And so our school mental health professionals are also the ones who can facilitate and coordinate access to our community partners in mental health agencies, youth justice, hospital settings, et cetera, et cetera. And again, when we think of the AIM model and those students at that top tier in need of intensive support, this is one role where it can be very effective as well.
Both Lori and Rob mentioned using and bringing your mental health lead into your school. Diane, you also mentioned the protocols that are very important for administrators to keep in mind. And I'm just going to allude a little bit to that point. My school is located in a rural area, and mental health supports are limited at best. And oftentimes you'll have a staff member or a student or a parent or even an outside agency that will come to you with an idea of what they feel the school needs to do to promote and support mental health. Now, although these ideas, are well-intended, the administrator needs to make sure that they use a decision-making process to guide the engagement of these supports that outside mental health agencies bring. So the School Mental Health Ontario website does provide administrators and board mental health teams with an excellent decision-making tool that aids in making sure that not only that mental health awareness, the products or the services are vetted for their appropriateness, but equally as important, that there is an alignment between these services with your board and your school mental health strategy and action plan. This decision-making tool also focuses on the quality of whether the service is evidence-based or evidence-informed, what the impact of the service will have on your school, what supports need to be in place. Is the school prepared and ready for this type of service? So the board mental health leads are an excellent resource to help you use this decision-making tool so that your students and staff receive the best possible support needed.
Deanne, I think that's such an excellent observation to note that schools and different school communities have different supports that surround them. And we may have different pathways of care depending on what support come into our schools or what community resources support our students and their mental health. So it truly is a circle of support. Thinking about your own school board professional staff that are there to help you in decision-making and help the students, as well as your community partners that are there to help support students and families, and ourselves in our work as we partner with them. So knowing that circle of support is important to think about how we wrap around students, but also your own circle of support as a leader. So as a school leader and as a principal, you do have a circle of support around you. You've got your leadership team, your superintendent, but also your mental health leader, perhaps a clinical manager of social work or psychology that you can lean into and have a conversation about to say, help me navigate. I'm wondering about a student. Be curious and caring. And have that conversation. And remember, there's people there to support you in your role as well as you navigate the pathway and the supports for your students. Because truly, none of us are in this alone. We are a village and we are a caring community, and we want to lean on each other. And we want to lean on the expertise of the mental health professionals within your system to help you with this work. But truly, as educators on the ground every day in those conversations, that you're going to be the ones that are noticing and listening and perhaps concerned, right? And so, just want to remind people that there's support there for you as well. And you do have a circle of support around you as well.
Thank you, Deanna. The richness of the conversation here today has been unbelievable. And there's so many things that came up that really, for us as school principals and vice principals, we can take away and consider, and even if we just work on one aspect, we've got a start, we've got an entrance point. The importance of building positive, healthy relationships with all people in our school community was highlighted for us. The culture of noticing and building a culture of noticing and the importance of noticing. What a wonderful beginning point and what a wonderful way to put that lens on and look after those that are in our care. The whole idea of a whole school approach where we're all partners in putting this in place together And by being partners, making it part of our daily practice and incorporating that noticing into our daily, everyday practices. The whole notion of knowing our students and looking at them from a strength-based lens was emphasized immensely. And the need for us as leaders to take a compassionate stance was also emphasized by our panel here today. Consistent messaging and communication and accessibility of information was stressed by people as we talked today. And the importance of our staff and their well-being was highlighted many times. In essence, today we talked about being present to ourselves, being present to our school community, being present to those we serve. And so I thank you for joining in this discussion today and sharing the richness of your practice and your thinking. Thank you.